So today we're recording at Lonsdale Building's headquarters, which is in Melbourne, and I really like the setup that we've got here, and we're at Nick's offices. So Young Builder of the Year 2018. So welcome to Build Hatch, Nick.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me.
As always with Build Hatch, we like to go back to the beginning and hear about our guests, where you grew up, what motivates you. So if we can take it back to the beginning, whereabouts did you grow up in Melbourne?
So northern suburbs, originally Coburg, and then my parents separated when we were quite young, maybe I think I was around 7 or 8 years old, and my mum moved over to the north at Thomastown way. So for the most part, we were with her probably 85% of the time. She was a primary carer, so we grew up a lot out there from around that age upwards. And stayed out north until I was about 22.
Okay, and growing up at school, did you have any aspirations to go into a particular trade or university? What were you thinking back then?
I wasn't a very intellectual person, and school wasn't really for me. I spent most of my time at school socialising. I like to think I'm, reasonably charismatic and get along with people quite well. So I spent most of my time talking to girls and hanging out with mates and probably not focusing on work as much as I should have. And so, no, I didn't really have any aspirations at that stage, didn't really have any ideas. It was, for me, or for my brother and I, the 20% of the time we spent with our dad, who now works for me, we'd go, he purchased a small hobby farm just out of Dalesford, central Victoria, quite dry and barren. So we would spend every second weekend up there. And that's where it really started. He's not a builder, but he just tinkers. And from then to now, he's probably renovated 10 houses. So that's where it kind of started for me.
So that was a sort of brief introduction into the practical aspects of it.
Yeah, and basically an introduction to hard work. And he would say, listen, you boys want a motorbike? Every kid's dream to have a motorbike as well. If you want that, 3 months. Every second weekend for 3 months, you got to come up here, and whether it's hooking up the trailer to the quad and driving around and picking up rocks and trying to clean up a paddock, or digging holes in an extremely volcanic area for sheds and other bits and pieces and building stuff. That's what we would do. We'd just basically be labourers for him, and we would work.
And that, I guess, that's the introduction into not only the practical side of it, but also perhaps work ethic as well.
Yeah, definitely work ethic, and getting something out of it at the end of the day, getting a motorbike, getting something tangible. You come to the quick realisation that this life, if you want something, you got to bust your ass to get it. And he definitely did not make it easy for us. If anything, it was slave labour and underpaid, but.
And I bet you're thankful for that today.
Extremely thankful. Yeah, extremely thankful.
Okay, so what about the introduction into construction? So from, I guess, a bit of part-time farm sort of lifestyle and enjoying that practical aspect, how did you get into actual construction from there?
Yeah, so I believe it was year 10, somewhere during year 10, I basically got... I think I went back to get... I think I was maybe first semester of year 10. I went back to get my roster for the next semester, and the principal said, you don't have a roster for next semester. Basically, we don't want you back here. You're not doing anything. You're just coming here for a bit of fun and hanging out, and that's not really what we want. So...
At least they were honest.
Yeah, off you go and see you later. So I went back and told Mum, and she wasn't very happy, and told Dad, and he was... not very happy at it as well, as you can imagine. And, so he just said, well, get yourself a job, mate, straight up, Mum said, okay, well, you're not going to school, you're paying board, so you better work out how to get some money. And from there, a girl at school was a close friend. Her father was a fencing contractor, so, timber paling fences. And he said, yep, no worries, come get on board. And so I went and worked for him for, I can't really remember the exact time, but I think it was maybe 6 months. Really loved it. He loved me. Great guy to work for. And to start off, wasn't allowed to use any tools, just lugging stuff around, which was all right for me. It's a bit of a competition of how many fence palings you could lift or how many posts you could lift. But it didn't take very long to work out how to build a timber paling fence, you know. Chuck out a string line, measure it out, dig some holes, whack your posts in, whack your rails in, chuck some palings on, you're done. So it didn't take too long that I grew bored of it and realised that I kind of needed something more to stimulate me rather than just getting paid at the end of the week. So I started looking for an apprenticeship. And, I was fortunate enough. This was, I don't know, it seems so strange for me to even say this, but I found a job looking in a newspaper for a job. You know, this day and age, you wouldn't have it, but there was an advertisement for carpentry apprentices. And so I rang this guy up and this fencing contractor would never start early. So it was like a 10 o'clock start.
So it was ideal back then.
So it was perfect. And I didn't really know anything about like real work, apart from working with my dad on the weekends, didn't know anything about like 9 to 5,
like
7
schedules
to,
and time frames and
what the world
pressures.
works on. Yeah. So I called up this guy and I said, listen, I want to give it a crack and blah, blah, blah. And he said, okay, no dramas, and tell me a bit about yourself. And I did. And he said, rightio, I can't remember what the date was, but he said on Monday, and I was 17 at the time. And he said, on Monday, I'll pick you up at 6. And I said, you know, I'm assuming you mean 6 in the morning. He was doing what you did, laughing on the phone. He said, yes, mate. Make sure you were standing out the front at 6 o'clock. If I was you, I'd be standing at the front at 5 to 6. Do not be late because I won't be waiting for you. If you're not there, I'm going. And true to form, he rocked up, black ute and trailer on the back, tradies trailer, and off we went. And that was one of the hardest days of my life.
I bet it was.
He had a mission to try and break me, and we worked out in Craigieburn, volume houses, framing, stick framing with a truss roof, prefab truss roof, and he just absolutely grinded. We started, he picked me up at 6, you know, it was half an hour away, started at 6:30. We didn't stop till 8 o'clock, and my mum was waiting in the car. And I got in the car and she said, you are not going back to work for this guy. No way. But yeah, that's where it started, and I continued on with him, and he was another, I've been blessed with some extremely great role models. Might not have came across personally wise, but work wise and work ethic. I couldn't be happier with the work, with the people that got put in front of me, and that's what's really made a difference.
And don't you think, I mean, construction, it's nice to be able to say that there is that a little bit of old school mentality left, and although you don't appreciate it at the time, pounding the pavement and doing those hard yards, you come to appreciate it down the track. Yeah,
so much so. You know, there's nothing more, especially now, there's nothing more than I love than to get out on site on a Saturday and do some work. You know, I always, not so much this year, but last year, every Saturday I'd go out with my tip truck and do site cleans on a Saturday. You know, that's probably the job that you need the least amount to like really think about, but that for me is such a good release in just, you know, being out there, seeing what's going on with the boys and the jobs and loading stuff up. And it's a bit of that old school mentality where you just got to put in a bit of elbow grease and, you know, get it done.
Yeah, look, I did a similar thing, and being a Saturday, my head was a lot clearer when I was building that is, and I could actually take the kids along or my wife along, and they get a bit of an insight into that work ethic, what your dad's actually doing. Yeah,
a bit of appreciation into
it is,
how hard it can be.
Yeah, and earning their stripes with that elbow grease that you referred to.
Yeah. And, you know, best thing about a Saturday for me is that the phone, it goes down to about 20% of what it normally is Monday to Friday. So, you know, it's just fantastic not to have that in the background and going on.
Okay, so from there, I guess you were plodding along and you came up with the motivation and concept behind establishing your own construction company. How far were you through, I guess, in the construction process to come up with that idea, working for yourself?
Well, it happened pretty early on for me. A good mate of mine who also at the same time was going to the same school best mates, Italian guy, spent a lot of time with his family. He also got asked to leave, so it was kind of the duo. He went and did an apprenticeship as well. And very early on, I just worked because I'd worked with my old man on the farm, or he was a clothing wholesaler as well. So whenever we went on the farm, he'd had these little pop-up shops in the country, for 2 weeks, and he would put us there Saturday and Sunday to work. And, so we learned a little bit about money and all the rest of it. And literally we're 14, 15-year-old boys just being left there to our own devices. Sounds crazy, but
that's how it was.
Yeah, that's how it was. So I kind of knew, I knew that I could make money, and I was always thinking about making money, because where I grew up, we didn't, like, when my parents got divorced, my mum chose not to go to work. She chose to dedicate her life to the church and, do her tithes and offering, giving money she didn't have to the church. And we didn't spend much time with my dad, only about 20% of the time. So we didn't have a lot of money. So if we wanted something, we kind of needed to make some money to get it. And this is, through dad. So I was happy to work weekends. So during my first year, someone would ask you, can you build a deck? Can you build a pergola? Can you build this? Can you build that? And me being the person I am, yep, I'd just say yes to everything. And if I wasn't confident enough to build it, then I'd ask my mate, who was also a first-year apprentice but doing different components of the building industry, if he knew how to do it. And generally one of us would have half an idea and, we'd put in and get it done. Or if we didn't, then I'd ask, one of the contractors, can you explain this? Can you come out for a day and work with us? I'll pay you, which is always a bit weird for an apprentice to be paying, a subby, but that happens, and just kind of went on from there. So I went through the whole apprenticeship thing. I started subcontracting. I didn't finish my apprenticeship. I started subcontracting, I think third year through it. I got an offer from a builder who I think he was offering me like $200 a day. And I was like, whoa, this is great. My first year I got paid $4.26 an hour, my first year. So I think it was almost at third year or just on third year, this guy's offering me $200 a day, and this is,
so an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I'm thinking, wow, this is fantastic. So he just doesn't want to deal with paying an apprentice and all the bullshit that goes along with it. So yeah, I jumped on with him and went through that and learned a fair bit from him, and it was just the same thing. It was a little bit of natural progression, and then I met a gentleman, an older bloke. His name was Jack. He was about 60 odd, and he was doing maintenance for real estate agents and houses. And I built a pergola for his son, and then he asked me to come and build a pergola at his place, and then he asked me to give him a hand with the maintenance type stuff, and we became, you could call it a business partner or just working with each other for a year or 18 months. And that was really one of the best parts about my career, working as this maintenance guy, because I got to see every facet of a house, generally after it's finished, and all the stuff that had gone wrong with it, and also how to fix all that stuff. So you really got a good insight into how the mechanics and everything worked. And that's how it naturally progressed. From there, someone asked me to come and supervise 4 townhouses. So I jumped on that. And I did all the carpentry on that with a couple other guys while supervising at the same time. And just slowly, it led from there. More carpentry for a few years and helping out supervising. And then, if I remember correctly, one of my best mates' mothers is an architect, and she had a small job. And she said, do you want to price this job? I was like, wow, never really priced a job before. I don't really know what to do. But
clearly you'd said yes every opportunity up until this point.
Yeah.
So why say no then?
Yeah, I was like, well, why not? I'll have a crack at it. And, I had I've got a mate now who owns a quantity surveying firm in the city, and a pretty big firm. And because of the way that I grew up and I started my trade and then I started working for other people on the side, the way that I broke things down, working out a bill of quantities, working out how to quote things was literally how long is it going to physically take me or take me and whoever, labour-wise, what is the material cost? And then there's that percentage of, you call it a builder's margin these days or whatever you want to profit back then. You kind of gauge that on the person and work it out from there. So, which is quite different to the way I do it these days. We use rates and all the different pieces.
I guess what you've actually done is you've applied a practical approach. You've tried to come up with a practical way of solving a problem in your realm.
Yeah.
So you've done what you could at the time, the resources that you had. You've asked people if you didn't know the answer to a problem, but you've then gone another step and tried to come up with an actual way of sorting it or looking at it in your own perspective to work it out.
Yeah, definitely. You have to, you just got to use the resources that you have, whether they're physical resources or they're mental resources. You got to use what you've got. And, I look back on it now, and while I hate making mistakes, I also love making mistakes because they're the only way you learn. And when it's your own money, you got to honour it. There's been plenty of fuck ups. It's just human error. But you got to honour whatever you do. So that's a big part of it. If you've got to work a day for free, or if something, these days costs you 10 grand, well, be a man about it and honour it. And then it's that word of mouth, it's that honouring that, one, makes me feel good and sleep good at night. But two, if for whatever reason a subcontractor, a supplier or a client's friend sees that, hears that, well, it just, holds you in such good stead. So, yeah, you work out what you need to do and you go from there. And so just for me, I started pricing this job. And she was great. The architect, Julie, her name was, she helped me even, price it and coach me a little bit. And, since then I've done, a heap of jobs for her and it's been fantastic. She really gave me a kickstart and gave me a confidence boost to start progressing into the rest of my career. From there, I picked up a build for an old Greek gentleman, and that was pretty challenging. And he was pretty challenging as a client, and that was the first real build. So it was, it's terrible to have challenging clients and hard jobs to work on, but when you look back on them, they're some of the best because you take back what you've learnt from that, and then you implement it into the next job.
And that's the important ingredient in the whole concept, and that is, if you don't learn something from those really bad situations, and as you said, sometimes we all have to suck it up, eat a shit sandwich now and then, as they say.
100%.
And but if you don't learn and reflect on what went wrong, whether it was a planning issue or a personnel issue or resource problem, then it's no good to anyone moving forward. But if you can learn from it and apply it and incorporate it into your business, whether it's a systems issue or whether it's a system solution or a resources solution, then it puts you in a great position moving forward. Yeah,
it does. And, from time to time you forget a mistake that you made years ago and things pop up and that remind you of it. But you constantly, a lot of people ask me these days, who's my competition? Always. Everyone wants to know who's their competition, When you and I have gone through a lot of our social media and our kind of approach to what we do, people call it marketing. I don't really call it marketing, but they always ask you that question: who's your competition? And for me, I don't really care what anyone else is doing. I definitely get inspired by other builders, but my competition is myself, being a better version of myself, and that's where it comes back to, owning your mistakes and wanting to be a better version of yourself. And if you can keep doing that, that's what's got me going. No one pisses me off more than I piss myself off and get frustrated with my mistakes. But at the same time, I love it because I know I'm going to take it up a notch next time around.
So when you began with Lonsdale Building Group, what was your vision back then?
Yeah, it's quite funny. Growing up out north in Thomastown and out that way, it's a totally different... how do I put this? it's not going to piss too many people off.
Like demographic.
It's a totally different demographic
community.
to here.
It's a totally different community.
Yeah. And, you know, you've got totally different dreams and aspirations living out there and living here, and totally different opportunities in two neck of the woods. So my aspirations back then were the Aussie dream, you know. Buy a house for 250 grand and pay the sucker off, and, you know, have my ute or whatever car it was to get around, and then have a cool, you know, Aussie car. So that was my aspirations of myself, and intertwined in that East Lonsdale Building Group, you know, just having a company that I didn't really have a goal other than, you know, providing for myself and my future family. And it wasn't until I met a friend, a guy who's my best mate, has been my best mate for the, you know, past 10, 11 years, that really gave me some inspiration. I always had this thing, because of the way that we grew up with a lack of funds. You know, I just wanted to be successful. And I didn't even know what successful was, but I just, you know, I had to get out.
But that was fighting that was fighting yourself.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah. And then so when I met this guy, Brooke, who's now, you know, I speak to him every day, FaceTime every single day, if not probably 3 or 4 times a day. We're best mates. We have been since the day we met. And he really inspired me. And one thing that I got a couple of jobs over here. That one from Julie that was in Hawthorne, and then another one in Huntingdale, just down the road here. And, you know, one of the first things that he said to me, work related, was, you should really try and get work over this side of town, because I think something was happening financially with the world at that time. I think it was just after GFC, and he said, you know, doesn't matter what recession we go through in the world, there are particular suburbs or particular parts of any community that will always keep spending. And for you, for building, if you were to work in the inner southeast, Toorak, South Yarra, Malvern, Armidale, and all these areas, if you can establish a good name for yourself and a good reputation, these guys are always going to keep spending.
That's right. And it could be, in good times, it might be that they might be knocking down and doing rebuilds, or in the tighter times, during recessions, it might be alterations and additions. Yeah.
So that's, you know, that's what inspired me, and that's basically what made me take the move from the north into the southeast. And it was massive for me, because I grew up all my life out north, and to move from something, you know, your home, all your friends, and kind of leave something behind, it felt like I was going overseas.
Yeah, right.
You know, I would come over here. I didn't even know where the bloody Botanical Gardens was. Like, seriously, I had never been to the Botanical Gardens. I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know where any of the streets were. Punt Road. I couldn't even work out where bloody Chapel Street was. And it was, I was the laughing stock of all the boys at the start for the first, you know, 12 months to figure out where the hell I was going. But yeah, that's when I made that big move. That's when my goals and dreams and aspirations started to change. When you can kind of get a sense of things that you can achieve, then things make a difference.
All right. So back then, were you doing everything, like bookkeeping and quotes and everything else that goes with it?
Yeah. You have to. You know, you start off as a tradie. You got really no choice. You have to do all that kind of stuff. And definitely not a strong point of mine was the whole paying the tax on time, working out all your book work. Is just like when you're a young bloke and trying to have a crack, and not being educated in any of these facets. You just, money comes in, you spend the money, buy some tools, go out, do this, do that. So it's a natural progression that you learn how to deal with all these things, because, you know, they all come up at one point or another, and you've got to educate yourself on how to do it. So yeah, I definitely have been through all the different processes of the building industry and learnt myself. And, you know, when I had enough work, had enough funds, then you employ someone who can do that job better than you can. So it frees you up to do whatever you're good at. So yeah, bookkeeping, estimating, contract administration, everything from working on the tools and doing all that after hours into 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night and just, busting your ass. You've just got to do it.
You mentioned before that you have a best friend that you talk to daily and you have your dad employed in the business. Are they the guys that you talk to when making big decisions in your company?
Yes and no. Probably my dad, I speak to my dad more so. So he's just joined the team probably about 6 months ago. And I speak to him more so about the building operation side of things on site and the guys. And then I've got a handful of other friends that I'll speak to about, bigger building decisions or bigger company decisions or, buying a development or, how to deal with different people and different clients. I'm pretty fortunate. I put a lot of effort into my friends, my family, the staff. I'll go the extra mile for everybody. And I'll always help everyone out. And that's never been intentionally, that's just been what I've done. So when I've gone through times of crisis, I generally try and keep as many things to myself and don't put too many things out there until the point where when people can see that I'm stressed, that's when I'm like almost at breaking point, and then I'll just start to talk and start to work things out. But I've got a lot of people that I can lean on, and I'm fortunate that I've got a lot of different people in a lot of different fields, from lawyers, accountants, psychologists, you name it. I've got a lot of friends, and that's only because I've been fortunate. I've worked for a lot of people. I've built a lot of relationships from having previous clients. So I'm fortunate that I can lean on a lot of people and help me make decisions. But my best mate, Brooke, he's like out of this world, personality, super crazy, does extremely well for himself, high energy and super intelligent. He's like a walking calculator, can spit numbers as they come out. And he's been, a massive impact in my life and, still someone that I speak to about every decision and, get a different perspective on it.
Certainly. And so I mentioned at the beginning with the introduction that you became Young Builder of the Year in 2018. What was that like, winning that?
Yeah, that was amazing. It was a massive pivotal point in my career, and I think it's probably going to be I think that'll continue, to be a massive turning point for me. That was great recognition for everything that I'd done for, however long, 15, 16, 17 years prior to that. Just all those days and Saturdays and Sundays and finishing at 6 and whatever late at night. That's what it was for me. It was that accomplishment for that that really made it right for me. And then it was also, so getting that recognition was great, and it was very overwhelming. I even teared up when I got home, and it's just like, wow, it's just
overwhelming.
Yeah, I didn't think that I had any chance in winning it. It was just, I almost fell over when they rang me and said, the judges have nominated you for this award. And I was like, is it a joke? It was just incredible. But the flow-on effect for that, the inspiration that I got from that was what the pivotal moment was for me, and it was setting a standard. And one of the main judges, Frank, I'm not sure what his last name is, but he said to me as I walked out of the ballroom that night, he said, "I put a lot of trust in you. Do not fuck this up for me." And I was like, yeah, okay, it's massive. But, it meant a lot for him to be choosing someone, being myself. And I don't want to let anyone down. And, I took that on as a challenge that I wanted to make sure, from this point onwards, it's like, okay, if everyone thinks we're at a good standard now, I know we can go up another level, 10 more notches from where we are now. So let's really gear it up. and let's go to the next level. And it's been a massive change in the last 2 years. Massive.
And at some point, you were approached to participate in sort of TV production shows and the like. How did that come about?
So that was definitely off the back of that. So the Master Builders Association of Victoria and myself, really because of that, we grew tight because of that. I really appreciated that award and really appreciated everything that they'd done. So I kept in contact with them and their marketing person at the time. She was lovely. And I just said, if you ever need anything from me, I'm more than happy to, give back where I can in anything, whether it's next year talking to these guys that get nominated or whoever, whatever you need, just reach out and I'll be there for you guys. And one day they rang up and said, listen, we're sponsoring this show, Healthy Homes. The host is Walt Collins, this, that and the other thing. And we'd love for you to feature in that with him. So we're basically buying a time slot on that to promote Master Builders Association of Victoria, and we want you to be the face of that. And I was like, Jesus Christ, this is okay. Wow, this is a lot of responsibility. So they just said he'll get in contact. Do you want to do it? And I was like, yep, okay, no worries. Of course I want to do it. It's great. It's a great honour for me, and it's going to benefit me like ridiculously, I think, or it could, and why not? So a couple of weeks later, we organised. He came out to do an episode of Healthy Homes, and he rang me up and said, "Can I come out to one of your job sites?" I said, "Yep, we've got this one. We're doing some demolition at the moment. Come out. We'll set up." And we just got talking, and I'd had the videographer on for I don't know, maybe 6 months. So I had just started to become comfortable with the camera. And it's something that does not come easy to me. I mean, a lot of people that now say it looks so natural, but it's been almost 2 years of being in front of the camera, practicing, fucking things up, trying to take takes 4 or 5 times,
keeping focus whilst pretending there's no one there watching you.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. And so I was probably 6 months into that, and Walt was extremely accommodating and made me feel so comfortable and relaxed. And
he's a real character, really relatable and a bit of a larrikin. Yeah.
And we just got along really well. And so it just went from there. We did that episode, and then, he obviously had my phone number from the Master Builders, and he called me 3 or 4 days later and said, "Mate, listen, I'm actually editing this at the moment, and you've really come across well. You've really come across natural. You did a great job. How do you feel about jumping on a couple of episodes for Healthy Homes with me and, being the builder for this season?" I think they do 5 or 6 episodes. I said, "Mate, 100%, I'll be honest." He said, "We're happy to pay you X amount an episode." And I just said, "Listen, not interested in the money. I'm happy just to come out and, be a part of it. And I really honour and respect you for ringing me and asking me for that. I don't need the money. I'll come out, be a part of the team, and we'll just get it done and have a bit of fun with it." And, no one had ever done that for him before. So from there, that just grew a bit of respect, and we just, did a few episodes and just went from there. And, so every now and again now I'm still their chosen builder for the Healthy Homes. And whenever they've got an episode that needs a builder on it, I'm the guy that gets call up. And that's been 2 years of Walt and I hanging out and becoming good mates. And we are really good mates. We speak 3 or 4 times a week. He's as crazy as he comes across on my social media platform. That's how crazy he is. That's just him in real life. He's very quick-witted. He's fun. He's extremely loving and caring of everybody. So that's how that came about.
And isn't it amazing to look back? But it just goes to show that consistently saying yes to opportunities as they present themselves, it's amazing where it could go.
Yeah. Once again, that goes back to my childhood and growing up and not having a lot of opportunities to say yes to and kind of forging your way, which, is fantastic. And, everyone's got their own story and everyone comes from their own background. But for me, that's what it was. And so when I was when I got to a certain point, I think I was about 22, I was just like, okay, if things come up, I just need to say yes. You just need to be involved. You need to give it a crack. You know, whether you're making money or not making money, an opportunity is an opportunity. You got to look. You can't just look at the short term. You got to look at the long term, and you've got to put in. And you know, I've done a lot of free work for people. You know, $150,000 worth I did for one guy, and you know, people were saying to me like, "This is a lot of your fucking time. You're getting involved in doing this, and you know, you put in for 12 months and this and that, and you know, at the end of the day, you shouldn't be doing this. And at the end of the day, for me, you know, it's 10 years down the track, and that's what I did back then for that amount of money, which everyone thought I was crazy, you know, managing this job on the side, and, you know, the amount of pressure it put on me, it's paid dividends. So people are going to be able to see through the fog of the short term and look, you know, long distance, choose the people that you want to hang around with, get people that inspire you, that you aspire to be like, and, you know, put your balls on the line, take a risk.
And I mean, and that ties in with the theme of this podcast, which is, you know, we have this saying on Build Hatch that a picture tells 1,000 words, but it doesn't tell the full story. And people listening to this need to be aware of that and be reminded of how important it is to not necessarily be focused or driven by the dollar, but if you can just give and help and develop a working relationship, it's a long-term game. It's not a short-term or overnight game. And if people are focused in that short-term space, it doesn't last, or doesn't seem to last, particularly from where I sit and the issues that I see.
Yeah, it's definitely detrimental. Detrimental to everything. It's detrimental to your friendships, relationships, work-wise. I mean, obviously you got to keep yourself focused and make sure you've got food on the table and make sure you know, making money and doing all those things. But if you're just always focused on the short term, it's not going to be good for you long term. It's pretty simple, and you're not going to be able to reach, you know, big goals and the things you want to reach without investing in other opportunities and putting yourself out there.
So fast forward to, I guess, the opportunity that you had with Healthy Homes. What did that opportunity do to your business besides helping them with their projects? What did it actually do to your business?
Okay, so I get this question a lot in a roundabout way about a lot of stuff that we do. Obviously, we're flat out on social media, majorly probably Instagram. We're also trying to get some other stuff up and going at the moment that we're working on in the background. And you can't necessarily say that one thing in particular in this kind of space, like social media wise, and I'll put that into that category, gets you anywhere in particular. But it's everything combined that makes us at a success.
So the little things that add up.
Yeah, everything adds up. You know, it's from when a client is choosing a builder, you've submitted a quote, you've gone there, you've put forward your quotation. A lot of the time, then these guys go on, you know, I try my best to work out to get a good vibe going. If you can get a good vibe going, if those guys then go and research you and see all these things that you've done, you know, the way that you run your social media, the fact that you've been trustworthy enough to be on a TV show about building, and you know, people are watching that and taking your word for gospel. You've got a good website, all these other bits and pieces that go along with it, along with that word of mouth. And that's how we get most of our work. It's all word of mouth. So along with that, it seals the deal. So that's how that's impacted on my life, I suppose, with the Healthy Home stuff. And it's just fun. It's fun. You know, it's good hanging out. It's good. You know, it's a totally different thing. Even though we're doing building stuff, it's a totally different job for me. When I go there and, you know, we're hanging out with Walt and Danny and the film crew and everyone else that goes into it, it's a challenge for me because, you know, while I've done it probably, 5 or 6 times now, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I got no idea. And these guys kind of look at you and expect you to know what you're doing because you know what you're doing build-wise, but you really got no idea. So it's a challenge for me to listen to everybody, you I'm like the apprentice out there again, and I'm trying to take everything on board, try not to make mistakes. And Walt's a totally different person when he's filming. When he's filming his show, he's just so like a bloody sergeant, and he's not scared and will not hold back to pull someone up or to yell at someone. He's particular, he's meticulous. He wants everything done 110%. So, also having that in the back of your mind too. For me, I don't want to fuck up and make a mistake. So yeah, it's a good challenge to be out there, to learn a different skill, and putting in with him and doing that at no cost. He helps me. This is more of a long-term thing again. I just put it out there because I didn't want to get paid. I didn't want to do anything. I was thankful for the opportunity. Now, in the same token, he's then helped me and teach me how to be better in front of the camera, how to come across better, so people can be relatable to me, or I can be relatable to them. So it's all those things that have kind of
that add up.
Yeah.
All right, Nick. So at some point, I guess being a builder and having the career that you've had, eventually you tend to. It's only natural at some point that you enter into the property development space. So how did you sort of transition into that?
I wouldn't say I'm fully transitioned or a fully seasoned property developer, not by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, it is natural progression, I suppose, for any trade, particularly a carpenter who goes on then to be a builder, to do some form of property development. I think anyone that doesn't do it is mad, but there's no secrets, and it is hard.
It's very different, isn't it?
It is totally different to what everybody thinks it is. It's not just...
It looks glamorous on the surface.
Yeah, but
it's not.
Developers make so much money, and it's all this and it's all that, and it's like, now looking back, it's like, Jesus, it would have been just easier to, do client work and have that continued money to come in. But it's a different facet. It's something I would encourage everyone to get involved with. But you just got to, you got to learn. There's a lot more in it than just knocking up a house or renovating a house or pulling down a house and building a couple of townhouses. This is where tradies get unstuck, because it's the research, it's the paperwork that actually makes the development. Building, renovating, doing whatever it is to the property that you're going to do is by far the easiest part.
Yeah, it's rather the process than the actual product.
Yeah. And, you're saying before that you've got a couple of, or that some of your followers are not from Australia, and I can't speak for other countries, but or even other states, but I know Australia's pretty well the same with the housing market at the moment. The issue that we're facing now for property developers, the hardest part is the buy. It used to be, the buy used to be the easy part, but now this is where all the research has got to go in, because everybody's worked out that they can be a property developer. Every mum and dad can be a property developer because they, the baby boomers have bought everything and they're sitting on a block and they can develop it. So it's really the buy and doing your research on the comparative sales and making sure that your build costs of roughly what you want to build and all the other secret little costs that go into it and the levies from the council and everything, and putting all those things down in an Excel spreadsheet and going to speak to someone who can give you a bit of advice on making sure that all these numbers actually stack. And then at the end of the day, you want to make sure that, for me, at the end of the day, when I'm doing any sort of development, my number one rule is, will it make 20% on paper? It's got to make 20% on paper. Now that allows you to go either way. That allows you hopefully not to go under 10%. That allows you to hopefully grow up to 30%, and that's great. But that's a really good position to be at, that you want to make that. So that the biggest thing in property development is the homework up front before you buy the house, and it is painful. And I reckon, I've created my own feasibility spreadsheet in Excel that took me 2 years and was, it cost me a fortune. I did it with a mate of mine who's a forensic accountant, and we went over things and over things and over things. And I've done a few developments now where I've worked out where my mistakes were and we've added those things in. It's just about doing your research as much as you can. I've probably done maybe 6, 7 different developments now. The things that you learn through that and change are just, is astronomical. And some of those haven't worked out. Some of those I've lost a shit ton of money on, like a serious shit ton of money on, from things that I couldn't control, being the market that crashed, being the lending that stopped happening, being stamp duty, fucked off, and I wasn't researched enough. But, now it's different, and now you try and make sure that you cover everything as much as you possibly can.
How do you handle that transition from becoming a builder to a developer? Is it, for the average person, is it a case of renovating and selling, building up, getting bigger, then maybe moving on to townhouses and going from there? Or is it more about surrounding yourself with decent people and your network and sort of dabbling into medium-sized projects?
Yeah, I think it's everything combined. You definitely need good people around you. You need a good real estate agent. And what you got to remember with every real estate agent is they're still a real estate agent. They still do the things that everyone does, but you definitely need a good one of those. You need good people around you. I mean, in regards to projects, that's really hard. One of my other best mates, Paul Franz, big property developer, does some awesome stuff, really super, super high-end stuff. And I catch up with him, if not every day, every second day. We go for a lap around the tan now they know where it is, 10, 12 years on. And, he does stuff like he's got a project that's, the build cost is, I think, 150 million that he's just about to start in Geelong. And, we have this discussion regularly. He started off doing one house, renovating a house, doing, building a new house, doing some dual locks, doing a couple of townhouses, and he naturally grew. But it's a regular conversation. It is so hard that a lot of the times we talk about, hey, I just really wish that I could just do the dual locks again. Once I get out of this project, I'm just going to chill out for a couple of years and just do a couple of dual locks, because that was probably the most profitable portion of it. You got to find your niche and you got to find what you're good at. If you're a builder that doesn't necessarily have massive ambitions but wants to make a little bit of money on the side, then buy a place and renovate it. You're crazy. A lot of tradies want to do this and get stuck, and the reason they get stuck is because they don't pay their fucking tax, or everyone's trying to hide money from the tax man because pay less tax and it's great. But these days, getting a loan, it's all about serviceability. So you want to make more money, pay more tax.
That's right.
It's a hard mentality to get into, but it's honestly, if you want to have ambitions and you're a tradie and you're a builder, pay more tax so you can borrow more money. If you can borrow more money, you're going to have the opportunity to, buy a more expensive place, that you can build something more expensive in a better area than what you're at. Those people in that area have generally got more money to spend. If they fall in love with that project that you've done, if they seriously fall in love with it, they're happy to pay, whether it's 20 or 200 grand more than the next person just to have your project. So it all comes back to your mentality.
I think it's important to note too, when you are making that transition or combining your business from being not just a builder but a property developer, you're really stepping up your name and image and reputation as well. And people would be surprised to know, but there are a lot of people that aren't just looking at buying an apartment or a particular building. They want to know who's built it. And there's a lot of repeat buyers as well. So you kind of have to, there's a fine line between being a great builder and a great property developer. They're two very different aspects. And yeah, it's another step up in terms of name, reputation, and another completely entire dynamic, really.
Yeah, and that's definitely something that that I've thought about, and that my business model's definitely worked around. In the next, between the period of 5 to 10 years, I want to be doing I want to be just doing my own projects, my own developments. I've got a small group of investors which I hope to grow off the back of doing a couple of good projects like we have. And the other thing, you're exactly right. I want to still be able to build my own developments, because there is, at the moment, in my area, there is a stigma around when someone sees one of our jobs, they know it's quality. And then when they look in our social media platforms, they can see, the whole build process, and they see how clean our sites are, and they see the quality of work that we do. And it's when we're going through the design phase of a development, definitely something in the back of my mind is that one day, I'll change this around. There's an architect in Melbourne which I hold in high regard, Rob Mills, one of Melbourne's best architects. This guy's quirky as hell. He does,
and he builds in these southeastern suburb belts that we were talking about earlier.
The best spots, the most expensive houses, and I've got a few friends that know him. And when I first came over here and was driving around South Yarra, Toorak, Armidale, people would say, that's a Rob Mills house. That's a Rob Mills house. And for me, I've always had this dream that I want people to be able to drive past one of my developments and say, that's a Lonsdale. That's one of Lonsdale's developments. That's a Lonsdale development. That's definitely something that I aspire to. So I've got to make sure that I know I can handle the quality side of things and build side of things. For me, a bit of the challenge is the design and finding a design that fits with what we're trying to build here. So that's something when we were working through the design phase of our project in Melbourne East at the moment, something that definitely came up in consideration. If you can, depending on the areas that you're building on, if you can work on that, and if you plan on being in this game for the period that I plan on being it for, then you might as well have your own tweaks or plays on a development so that over time people know.
Absolutely. All right, Nick, looking back now at that 15-year-old boy that got a no from a teacher, saying you're not going to cut it, off you go into the real world. What's it like looking back now?
I think I wouldn't really change anything, really. I actually would have changed a few things, but that was still a great stepping stone. I think when I was 13, my mum got approached by a carpenter who was building a development next door that said, I'll give your son, because they were talking about how I was no good at school and all the rest of it, and he said, I'll give your son, I'll give him a job. And my mum said no. And that's probably the only thing that I would change. I just wish I was 10 years older than I am. I wish I started this 10 years before. The property market, from a developer's point of view, if I could have got in 10 years earlier, there would have been, a lot more opportunities. If my head was at where it's at now 10 years ago. So I would have liked that fact. But I wouldn't have changed too many things, As much as the hard work and the upbringing that we had was, not ideal. It wasn't ideal at the time, but it's for the situation where I'm at now, it was ideal to make me who I am.
And you wouldn't be this person today if that probably didn't happen anyway. Yeah.
Who knows? And, who really cares? It is what it is, and you just kind of get on with it.
That's right. All right. Now, if people listening to this want to get into contact with you, besides your social media channels, which are quite busy at the moment, what's the best way to go about it?
Yeah, I am a big fan of giving back. So I, talk to a lot of people on social media. People reach out from time to time to have a chat and catch up about things. And, like I said to you at the start of this, when you're asking me about what you can and can't talk about, and I said, just talk about anything that comes to mind. I don't really care. I'm an open book. I'm happy to talk to people if they need advice or, if they've got something that's happening and they just need to know. I've gone through some really shit times. And I've gone through some fantastic times. There's way more good times than bad times. But in regards to getting in touch with us, we've got Facebook, Instagram. You feel free to drop me an email. It's pretty easy to get my phone number because it's all over everything that we've got. So even give me a call. The call is probably the least one that works for me because I get so many calls every day. I have 150, 200 phone calls every day. That's why I have to leave my phone out there and turn it on silent so no one's annoying me. But yeah, text message. Anyway, I don't really mind. If someone needs a bit of help, bit of guidance, someone to talk to about something, I'm more than happy for anyone to reach out.
Well, Nick, I appreciate you giving up your time coming on to Build Hatch, and I truly congratulate you on the Lonsdale Building Group. I find it absolutely fascinating, the work environment that you have here in your headquarters. It's very impressive, so I encourage people to check it out or reach out. And yeah, thanks again for inspiring our listeners, and appreciate you coming on to Build Hatch.
No worries. I appreciate you reaching out to me and giving back to everyone else there is out there. And, you know, this is a great way to help everyone hopefully learn from other people's experiences and become a better version of themselves. So well done.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks, Nick.